Alright, I guess it's time to get drunk.
I just said, yes man, right away, anything.
Alright, so today is the tasting of the whiskey and the rum that we aged with the barrel char in a jar kit. And if you haven't seen that video, I just put it out a couple weeks ago. It's right up here-ish. Yeah. Okay, so just a quick recap. I took a white whiskey or moonshine. This is basically corn and sugar, and then some white rum. Aged with 4 different kinds of wood: birch, sugar maple, cherry, and bourbon barrel charred white oak. So let's cut to the chase and get to the tasting. First thing I'm going to do is taste some of the liquor straight, just so I can remind my palate what kind of changes I'm looking for. I remember this one. Right off the nose, it's not very impressive. It's got a pretty strong straight alcohol kind of aroma, almost like isopropyl. A little bit of sweetness at the back. It's got some sugar and corn notes, almost like if you walk past a fresh bowl of sugar, like that. But nothing really to write home about. I'm sure it'd be great as a mixer. Not anything really remarkable about this. So the first one that I'm going to taste is the whiskey with the birch. A little piece of birch wood and some of the activated carbon in it, because I'm really interested to find out what actually happened with this stuff. On the nose, it's buttery. There's some sugar. Almost a mapley. I mean, it's got a little bit of a candy smell, like homemade pralines or something. It's way more subtle than any kind of wood that you would normally expect to find, like oak or maple or even French oak. It's only toasted, it's not charred, but it's got a really smooth kind of subtle flavor. I would use this if I had something come out too oaky or that just didn't have enough of its own character. I would blend this for sure. It's really good as it is. Like, I could sip on this no problem, but if I wanted to add like another layer to something, I would definitely be interested in blending this with something. I like it. It's good. I'm interested to try this with another liquor too. I can't wait to see what it did with the rum. Alright, so let's try out the sugar maple. And as you can see, the 2 colors of these, this is the birch, this is the sugar maple. Got a little bit of a red going on with that, and more of an amber with the sugar maple. So the color is excellent on all of these and very unique. Let me put these out real quick, and then look at how dark that is. That's the charred oak, but really, really different just with each of the woods. They're all toasted the same amount at the same temperatures, but you know, you get a much different, because they're all different species of wood, you're of course going to get different reactions in your solution. Okay, so that was the birch. Now we're going to try sugar maple. I'm just tasting a few drops of these, you know, like a half a teaspoon, because I've got 8 of them to taste, and I want to make it all the way over there to the last one of the rum without getting too sloshed on the video. The sugar character of that moonshine actually kind of comes forward first on the nose, and it gives it that kind of candy-like, almost bubblegummy kind of thing right up front, whereas the birch was more of a praline. Tasting a little bit more of a wood note in that maple. So far, nothing is like over wooded. The amount of time seems to have had no adverse effects on this. They taste pretty good. They don't have that kind of, okay, there's a little bit more tannin in the maple than there was in the birch. I dig it, but I think if I had something come out too soft, I would maybe blend in some of this. It's not something I would want to sip on all by itself because it's a little bit more tannic, but I think if you like a drier whiskey, I don't know. I mean, with this, it's kind of confusing. You get a little bit more wood character with that, a little more tannin, but you're hit up front on the nose, especially with the sugar character from this. This is not sweetened, it's just you're smelling and tasting the essence of the sugar left over in the distillate. So, I don't know, it's interesting. Usually in whiskey distilling, folks will, commercial distillers, they'll use sugar maple charcoal to filter. And I can definitely see that because it's got kind of a smoothing effect without adding a whole lot of flavor. So, I don't know. I dig it, but it's not my favorite. I would definitely use that to blend into something else. Now for the cherry. Okay. I hope it's not just in my brain because of the word cherry, but I am getting kind of a maraschino thing with this. Like, not like fresh tart cherries, but like candied cherries. And I think it's the interaction of the esters from the wood and the sugar from the sugar aroma from the moonshine. That's really good. That is really good. That kind of reminds me of well, not kind of. That really reminds me of amaretto. Yeah, I dig that. If I had something that I wanted to add a little bit of a cherry note to, I would add that. But I could definitely drink this just by itself. It's a little tannic, but not much. Yeah, I like that. And the cherry in there just kind of, the best way I can describe it is like a little bit of maraschino cherries. Like you threw in a maraschino cherry in your whiskey or something. It's kind of cool. All right, last one of the whiskeys. This one is the bourbon barrel charred white oak. So it's a number 3 char with the alligator texture on a piece of white oak. Toffee. It's the first thing I'm getting off of that. And hopefully you can see the incredibly dark color of that. It's not cloudy at all. You can see right through it, but man, it's like limousine tint on there. Here, you can get a little bit better view of the color right there. Again, I'm getting toffee and oak. Not nearly as much of the sugar character came through. Interesting. Reminds me of my grandpa. That is good. It's got a lot more bite to it, and that's that oak tannin. But it's not a bitterness. It's more of just a tongue bite. Some of the sweetness on your first taste, but like I said, on the aroma, not much at all. It was kind of interesting. In these other 3, the sugar was so forward, but I'm getting more of a traditional whiskey smell. And honestly, I haven't picked up corn from any of these. Now, maybe that's just me, and I'm not as good of a taster as Jesse is from the Still It channel, because honestly, he's some kind of magician when it comes to tasting stuff. I mean, just watching his brain work and as he picks out flavors is really, really fascinating. So if you haven't seen any of his tasting videos, I would highly recommend you watch one, because you'll learn a lot just on how to pick out flavors. Yeah. Yeah, I could drink that. I mean, it's not the best whiskey I've ever had for sure, but I think the reason why I'm not really picking up much corn from any of these is because it's probably not. I don't think that they convert the starches in the corn to sugars and then ferment them. I think it's more of a UJSSM, where the corn is a flavoring agent, not actually providing any sugars. And basically it's just boiled cornmeal, water, sugar, throw it all in a vat and ferment it, and then run it. Probably off grain, because like I said, I'm not picking up any corn from it unless I drink the straight spirit, but then it's more of a candy corn. And to me that says it was used as a flavoring rather than as a base part of the fermentable sugars. If you know anything about fermentation, if you watch Jesse's channel or George over at the Barley and Hops Brewing channel, then you'll know what I'm talking about. If this is a mystery to you, then I highly recommend you check out Still It and the Barley and Hops Brewing channel, because they are all about cool stuff with distilling and you can learn a ton. Alright, so that's enough of the whiskeys. I am now a huge fan of the barrel char in a jar kit, simply because he provided all the instructions that I needed, and everything was pre-toasted. I didn't have to toast anything. The oak was already charred, and there's enough in there to do like 12 full-size bottles of liquor, so I like that. And the fact that he gave me 5 different kinds of wood. And now remember, there was a French oak in there that I didn't use. I'm saving that for something else. I want to try, see if I can find some unaged brandy, eau de vie. That stuff is basically, it's brandy, but it's distilled wine before it's aged. And I think the French oak, I think that's what they do with brandy, is they use French oak barrels. And there's something else that's made with French oak. I can't remember right now, but if you do, put it down in the comments, because it's going to drive me crazy. Alright, so let's get on to the rum. I am interested to see what kind of chemistry happened with that. Because honestly, this side of things, like, fermenting things is great, and you can do tons of cool stuff with that. Distilling things is great, you can do tons of stuff with that. But this is a whole other aspect of the craft that I find fascinating. To me, there's just as much magic or alchemy in this kind of thing. It's an art as much as it is a science. And when you're at the hobby level, it's mostly art, because you're not doing the science to find out how many esters of this and compounds of that are going into your whiskey or your rum. But you learn with experience what's going to work best with whatever spirit. Now, one commenter actually mentioned that they aged some whiskey in a 20-liter barrel, and that came out, kind of light, and it didn't give much flavor. And then they got another barrel and they tried it again with the same spirit, and it came out completely different in a very short period of time. And that's something you have to take into account when you're doing something like this. You can have 2 jars that are full of the same stuff with the same amount of wood, but if in the same type of wood, but if one piece of oak came from one tree and one piece of oak came from another, you might get something completely different in both jars. And that's just the way it is, because it's an organic process. This whole thing from start to finish is all organic and changeable. So that's what makes it fun to me. All right, let's get on to the rum. Okay, so if I remember correctly on the rum, I was getting some banana and clove last time I tried it, with a little fruit action going on there. So let's see what we get this time. See if my nose is still working the same. See if I calibrated my nose right. Yeah, a little banana, a little clove, little, I don't know if, I think last time I said mangoey raspberry, but kind of a passion fruit kind of thing. It's good. Let's start with the birch again. wow. Smooth as smooth can be. Like, it's pretty smooth out of the bottle, but aging it really softened it out even more. It's got a little bit of rough edge, but not much. So I'm getting a lot of sweetness, but not a sugar sweetness, not a molasses or anything like that. Almost like a fake sweetness. It's kind of weird. Not too much of the fruit character. Not too much of the bright fruit character. But yeah, that's kind of weird. It's a little more tannic than I expected. But you know, first, as far as the mouthfeel, it's almost slick because it's so smooth. That's interesting. So I don't know what I would do with that, other than mix it with something. I don't know. I don't know enough about how they make rums and how to blend rums and things like that to know whether or not I would ever use that in a blend. So that's on me, though. There's not really anything wrong with it. It's just I'm not quite sure what to do with it. All right, so let's move on to the sugar maple. Not nearly as much color in this one, kind of like the whiskey. Again, really soft on the mouthfeel. Some kind of a candy. Not necessarily toffee, more of a taffy, if that makes sense. I'm trying not to just pull words out of my butt. Kind of like saltwater taffy is what it's reminding me of. There's a little bit of a salty note, and a little bit of a kind of a cooked sugar, really lightly cooked sugar. It's very interesting. Very soft, very smooth, very light for an aged rum, but I don't know. It's interesting. It doesn't taste anything like the Captain Morgan dark aged rum, and that's, I think, the biggest takeaway from both of these is that they don't taste like your traditionally aged rums, and I think that's kind of interesting because if I were smarter, I would know what I would have some ideas of what I could do with these. So I'm interested to do a little bit more research and see how I can blend these or what else I could do with them. I think I tasted this one last year. This one smells even softer. Yeah, there's no bite to that at all. That is nuts. I could drink a dangerous amount of this without even thinking. It's, for some reason, aging on wood has smoothed this out to the point that there's less bite than there's nothing to compare it to. There's not really anything to compare it to. It's not as smooth as Applejack, but it's pretty darn close. There's no bite. There's almost no heat. That is weird. But that kind of strong maraschino thing that I had in the whiskey, I don't really have in the rum. There's definitely some fruit character to it. Honestly, I think there's more fruit character in the white rum than there is in this aged rum. More discernible. Let me say that there's more discernible fruit character in the white rum than there is in any of these aged rums. So that I find fascinating. I'm not sure what to make of that, but you know, the white rum is all bright fruit. And a little bit of spice, whereas these are all much softer, much smoother. Almost as smooth as water. I'm not even joking. That is nuts. Yeah, this is, if you age rum on cherry, be careful, because for some reason the chemistry works out that this is crazy smooth. I did put some of the activated carbon in this, but I put it in all of them, and it's all the same amount. So I'm not sure how I ended up with something that's so much smoother, but that's kind of cool. I like that. All right, now let's try the oak, the charred barrel oak. Now, traditionally, used whiskey barrels, when they're done at the whiskey distillery, they'll sell them to a rum distillery, so there'll still be some of that whiskey inside the barrel, and a lot of the flavor has actually been leached out. So this is a little different. This is not like making traditional dark rum. It's going to have probably a little bit more tannin. That's my suspicion. Look at that color, though. Man, that charring really does a number on the color. It looks fantastic. That smells like a dark rum. All right, remember what I said about the cherry being too smooth? No. Okay, no, wait a second. It's really smooth, but it's, for some reason, not as smooth as the cherry. A few seconds in, you get a little bit more bite. A little bite comes back at you. Not much. I'm definitely getting more clove and banana. Some vanilla. Some strong vanilla. A little toffee. And not really molasses, but more of a Caro syrup kind of flavor. It's not sharp with the oak tannins, but I can definitely pick up oak in there. Almost a little sawdust, but really far back on the palate. So that's a lot to digest. I'm glad I only had little baby sips of everything, because I still have a lot to think about. Do I recommend the barrel char in a jar? Absolutely. It was just too much fun. You don't have to be as patient as me. You do not have to wait 12 months. I tasted everything after 40 days. I tasted everything after 80 days, and I was like, you know what? Let's see how far we can push it. Let's see if things change. And I will say that from when I tasted everything at 90 days, there was not nearly this much development in the flavors. There was a lot. I mean, they were just about ready to go, especially the oaks on the rum and the whiskey. But I feel like the cherry and the birch really came a long way in that extra time. The maple, it's not really blowing my skirt up. I don't think it's necessarily meant to be left alone, to be aged on your stuff alone. Now, I would be interested to see what happens when you char some of that maple and do some toasted and some charred together. If you get a little bit more color, a little bit more flavor development, some different layers, because right now it's kind of, there's not a whole lot going on with it. But I think if you put it with something else, with a different style of wood, with a different species of wood, and maybe some different char levels or toast levels, I think you might get something really interesting in there. You know what? Let's do something here. This is the oak. I got a few drops of the oak in there, and this is the sugar maple. Let's see what happens when we put just about a 50-50 mix. Right away, that brightens up the wood character. I would say it takes away a little bit of the smoothness of the oak and gives you a little bit more of a tannin bite from the maple. But it's not unpleasant. That's actually quite nice. Like if I had a mojito made with that blend, I think that would be phenomenal with some. I feel like this needs what I just tasted needs some lime juice and sugar and mint. That was the first thing that popped into my head was mojito. Not sure why. Anyway, this video is going on very, very long, so let me go ahead and shut it down. I'd love to know your thoughts on this experiment. Like I said, you don't have to go for 12 months. I am glad I did, but you can get some fantastic results after a little over a month. I would say 40 to 50 days. And honestly, the better quality of spirits that you use, the better the product is going to be, especially with the whiskey. If whatever comes out of the pipe at the end of the still is really good already as a white spirit, then aging it is just going to make it 100 times better. But this kind of thing, I feel like this has a lot of room for improvement, so aging it is definitely going to help and give you something that you'll be proud of. But so I don't know. I'm not quite sure what to do with all these, other than try some different blending experiments. So if you guys have any suggestions on how much you think I should mix with what, and you know, or maybe even some cocktails you might recommend, go ahead and shoot them to me in the comments down below. I'm really interested to know, because kind of my bag of tricks is empty on this one. I'm not quite sure what to do with these aged rums, other than the oak one, just drink it straight, and the cherry one, I'll probably drink that one before the battery has a chance to get cold in the camera. Yeah, so I mean, this was fun. I love doing this. I love trying to pick apart this stuff and just seeing what's going to happen, because to me it's like alchemy, you know. It's one of those things that if you get good at it, you know, that's a valuable skill to have, in my opinion. But yeah, this is fun. So if you enjoyed this video, I doubt you learned anything, because I'm no expert at tasting. Do me a favor, hit the like button. It really helps out the channel. If you want to see what I'm going to do next, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below, and hit the bell icon so you can get notified when I post new content. If you have any questions or comments about this, do feel free and post them down there. And I'll put a link for the barrel char in a jar kit down below. And keep in mind, this is not sponsored content. He sent me the kit so that I could try it out and give an honest review, and that's what I've given you. Oh, and I have t-shirts. If you are like me and have a beard, or don't have a beard, but you might be a little bored, feel free to check the links down below the video description. There's a little scroll down there for my new t-shirts. And probably do yourself a favor and order them in the right size, so that they don't make your man boobs stand out because you thought you were skinnier than you really are. You're welcome. Oh, one other thing. I made this table. If you want to see how, make sure you hit the subscribe button, because I'm going to post a video about it. Alright, thanks for watching. Talk at you later.